One. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Planner Live podcast. And I'm Sam Oakes. And this episode is coming to you from quarantine, although I'm in my office. It's across the road. I've managed to sneak out and avoid being a father, even though it's a bank holiday. I can't believe I'm working on a bank holiday. Unbelievable, but that's the kind of craziness I think of this lockdown, really. So today I am joined by a guest over Zoom, and it's a chap called James Prince. And I've had some really great conversations with James, and it's really interesting to me because in my 11 and a half years of working in financial planning recruitment, I've always heard stories about people that go and work offshore, and some of them make a real success out of it, and some of them don't do so well. So I hear a lot of horror stories, and a lot of the time candidates do ask me, Sam, what's it like working offshore? And sometimes I've got some really great stories to tell, and other times not so good. So I think it's really great to have somebody on the podcast who's going to talk about the realities of working offshore, how they've made it a success, and why perhaps you should, if you're thinking about it, move offshore and become a financial planner. So, like I said, James Prince, and I'm going to introduce you to James. So, James, thanks very much for coming on to the Financial Planner Live podcast. Like I said, it's a podcast designed to share your experiences, your highs and lows, everything about your career, really, as to why you got into financial planning, and really how you've made it a success. And hopefully people can learn from your experience. So thank you very much for joining me today.
No problem, Sam. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Great stuff, mate. So I think the first question I always ask everybody really is, and I'm always interested to know, is why did you decide to become a financial planner?
I mean, this is probably not going to be your traditional answers, but I was always into finance, investments and properties. But actually the thing for me was my best friend. It was more about the place than the job. So my best friend moved out to Abu Dhabi from the UK in 2010. And at the time I was a criminal defence lawyer.
Right.
And at that point I was getting a little bit fed up. I'd done 8 years defending criminals and was getting a little bit frustrated with it, and wanting to help people, but at the same time criminals are not really that appreciative of when you're doing good work. And so I went on a couple of weekend holidays to Abu Dhabi, fell in love with the place, and thought, I want to be out here. I want to move country. So I started to scour the web and look for what I could do, a new opportunity. And I came across some adverts for Devere, PIC Devere, and a company called Global Eye, and thought, actually, maybe I could be a financial advisor, and had a few conversations on the phone with the recruiters for the firm. So just sent my CV, got a call within a couple of days, and they explained the role and said that you could earn 100 grand a year. And at the time that I was probably earning £25,000 a year, something like that. So I was like, wow, this sounds amazing, and it's tax-free, and, it's the sunshine, and it's something new, and it's a new challenge. At the time I was 27, 28, and thought, I'll go ahead and have the interview. So that's kind of how it came about, of me becoming so
quite simply, a friend working and living abroad, you went out there to visit them and thought, I wouldn't mind a piece of this. I wouldn't mind living abroad. So I think at 27 as well, you do have that kind of thought in your head, don't you? Of like, living abroad is in your mind. You've got that kind of no fear really. And I think probably less commitments. Did you have children or a wife, family, anything like that at that stage?
I mean, not long-term girlfriend. And, I think it was just a combination of things that wasn't really going in the direction that we wanted to. And I was living in the countryside at the time. It was like 27 and settled down for retirement.
Oh right, okay.
And I was getting itchy feet and just wanted a new challenge.
Okay.
And that's where it all pieced together. And as I said, the rest is history.
So you were working as a lawyer previously to being a financial advisor. So and you didn't sort of have in the back of your mind a desire or a burning ambition to become a financial planner. It's just that you found and stumbled across a role in a country that you wanted to move to.
Yeah. And at the time, when I made the transition across, it was more about, for me, it was more about the place and the lifestyle. And even though I know myself that when I go into something, I do it, 110%. Initially, it was okay. Well, I'm going to be a financial advisor, but primarily it was about being where my best friend is and having a change and a new challenge. And then as the job unravelled over the years, which we can come to, I then realised that actually, this is an amazing job to be doing, and I'm fortunate that I stumbled across it.
Fantastic. Well, okay. Well, let's go back to the start then, because absolutely, there are a lot of recruitment consultants that are out there, and you mentioned one of the big companies out there, Devere, as well, and they've got a huge amount of internal recruiters, and dare I say it, are out there really selling the dream of what it's like to work as an offshore financial advisor. Painting a picture of all the roads are paved with gold, and you're going to make £100,000, £100,000 a year in your first year, and it's really easy to do. And we're going to train you, and we're going to develop you, and that's, I suppose, where I've heard the horror stories from. There's people saying, "Oh, well, like you go out there. I'm a financial advisor. I've gone out there and I'm sitting next to somebody who sells washing machines at Comet the weekend before." That these aren't real financial planners, and there was that kind of feeling around working offshore. Offshore. So, what was your experience like? Coming from a very professional background of law into a financial planning position, when you went over there in your first, who were you working for first of all then when you went out there?
For Global Eye.
For Global Eye, okay.
Yeah.
So what was your first, what was your perception of what it was going to be like to the reality, your first 3 months? What was it like?
It was very different in that, I got promised that I'd be given support, that they would give you training, that it would be this and it'd be that. And then when you got there, it was literally just, there's a desk, there was nobody in the room. And, there's a telephone, and get on with it, and I'll see you at the end of the week. And
throw yellow pages at you type thing and say, here's a phone, here's a yellow pages. Now, can you make some money type situation? Yeah, you see, that's what I've heard. That is what I've heard. And I think that's where, I don't really want to badmouth any companies, but Devere Group, for example, doesn't really get a very great name out there for those very reasons. And, I have come across a lot of people who've had that experience. So that is incredibly challenging. So no background of financial planning, no experience of that whatsoever. You've been in law, so you're probably not even used to selling yourself, let's say. I don't know. Is that?
Yeah, true, completely true. I would never say, I'm strong at sales or anything. Never had any practice on it. Never had any training on it. I had a 1 week course in the UK that you had to pass. So there was about 25, 30 people that turned up at the course in Manchester. And it was literally a crash course on how to be an international finance advisor in a week.
Right.
But the 5 days that we were there, and it was full, 8-hour days.
Yep.
Were really, I'd say 80% of it was just around the pitch. The pitch had to be word for word, verbatim. This is what you have to say when you first get in front of a client.
Right. Okay.
And I don't think 25, 30 people, 3 of us passed the course, the rest of them failed. And then I was the only person that ended up actually going out there and doing the job.
So 30 people going for their induction day in the UK, 3 people passed it, and you're the only one that went out there.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Crikey, that's pretty crazy, actually. That's pretty mad. Okay, cool. So, all right. So obviously you were sold a dream, you'd passed the course, you've got yourself out there, you were put into a room with a phone and told to get on with it. So what were you thinking at that point? Were you thinking, oh my God, or what was going through your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I still remember the Skype date that I used to have with my parents, and of course they were a little bit concerned that he's going to this new country. Okay, his best friend's there, but he doesn't know anything about this. And I remember having the Skype, and my mum and dad were as shocked about it as me, because they were saying, "Okay, so tell me about the training you've been having and the support." It's like, no, it doesn't exist. There's none of it. The manager so I went to Abu Dhabi, and there's a little bit of a difference between going to Abu Dhabi. I didn't know that at the time, But looking back, there's quite a big difference between going into the environment in Abu Dhabi compared to Dubai, because Dubai back then, things have changed a little bit now. Back then was this huge animal of a company, whereas Abu Dhabi was a fraction, maybe 10-20% of what Dubai. So there was one manager in Abu Dhabi who was doing her own role as an advisor, and she was successful at her job. And she didn't have any time for me, so it was really a case of me. There was a couple of other advisors just picking their brain. They'd been doing the job for maybe 1-2 years, but not really successfully. But I was just trying to pick up from them on the things that weren't working as much as the things that were, and just trying to learn quickly. It was kind of a bit like the blind leading the blind.
It was a bit like the blind leading the blind, yeah. I suppose as well, when someone's out there, even if they're running, it's a bit like recruitment. If they're running a business, they're still like a billing manager almost, yeah. So they're running their branch, but at the same time, they're out there trying to win their own business. So when you were enticed to go out there, did they give you a basic salary, or was it completely self-employed? How did that work? How did you fund yourself?
They did offer 3 months free accommodation. So and this was just in Abu Dhabi. So the accommodation was free for 3 months, but no income. There was nothing at all. So I was just, I was fortunate enough to be able to save a little bit of money. I think I probably had £10,000-12,000 savings that I managed to save up when I moved out to Abu Dhabi, and I ended up selling, a watch and things like that after, because I ran out of cash.
Right. Yeah.
So I had to basically, completely back myself. But yeah, so it was just the first 3 months accommodation free, and then it was just getting out there and using the savings that I had to get me through the first. They always say you probably 6 months before you get a sale.
Okay.
So I knew, okay, well, I had to, after 1 month, I'd probably gone through about $5,000, because you treat it like a holiday.
Yeah.
And then you realize quickly that I can't carry on like this, because I'm going to have no money, and I'm going to be going back home with a tail between my legs.
Yeah, expensive holiday.
So yeah, quickly adjusted and realized that we need to knuckle down and get stuck in, and you give it if you're going to do it, you need to give yourself properly 6 months.
Right. Okay. So again, that's another reality check, isn't it? People say you get out there, there's leads for you to work, you're going to be earning money straight away. But in reality, what you're saying is, if you're going to come and work offshore, but certainly back when you started, you felt that you needed a good 6 months before you got a deal across the table. A sale, as you would call it. So when you were over there then, and in those early stages working for Global, how did you win clients in your, in those early stages? How did you, because obviously, and we'll get into this, but you were a very successful international financial planner. You built a really, really great business and built some amazing clients. So I'm super impressed. And that's why I got you on the podcast, because it's like, well, how can you go from working as a criminal lawyer to becoming an international financial planner with loads of clients and earning some serious 7-figure earnings? I think that's amazing. So I want to kind of understand that a little bit more, and how you went about doing it. So, without any experience, how did you generate your clients when you were working offshore?
And initially from cold calling. So, I was fortunate that my best friend that moved out there was working at a golf club as a golf professional, and he now works with me, so does the same job as me.
Does he? Fair play.
But at the time he had some data of clients, and he said to me, start with these. So it was literally just sitting in the corner, cold calling, because I had nowhere to start, and I knew that was the only way that I was going to be able to build the business. You never really know how difficult something is really until you get into it. And I didn't think it would be as difficult as it was. I just thought it would be a case of, just turning up, getting into the office, and maybe some people giving me some clients, and all of a sudden, you make some calls and people go, yeah, I want financial advice. Can you come and see me? And you realize that actually after making, 500 calls and everyone's saying to you, no. You realize that this is really tough.
But that's really refreshing to hear, actually, because I think a lot of people will just think and probably be told that it's very easy. Go out there, you know, you get your clients, no problem at all. People have passed you some business. Hey, listen, there might be some companies out there that do that, and it might have changed
Mm.
since the very early stages that you've done it. It reminds me very much of like any kind of sales job like that. Reminds me very much of recruitment. You know, you have this perception in your mind of what it's going to be like. Oh, I'm going to work in a recruitment agency, and all these people are going to want jobs, and all these people are going to want to hire, and I'm just going to be a real helpful person. You don't realize just how many phone calls you have to make, how much rejection you have to go through, you know, how tough it actually is before you start earning some really good money in it. And people
Yeah.
just kind of have an expectation that, you know, it's going to be easy. And it's even, I think personally, it's even harder nowadays because you've got so many different plates to spin and so many different ways to try to generate clients, whether it's marketing, sales calls, networking events, or whatever it is. So, you know, you've got to really be quite focused. Whereas I know sitting in the corner and making 500 calls through a list sounds quite attractive these days, to be honest with you. It sounds like quite a
Just
simple
one thing
process.
to focus on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like one thing to focus on. It's like a simple process, isn't it? Right. Okay. So, all right then. So, in your first 6 months, you were sort of hemorrhaging cash, by the sounds of it, not making any client, you know, getting any clients on board. So, all of a sudden, you won your first client. Can you remember what your first client was like that you won?
Yes. Yeah. So it was a gentleman that I actually cold called, and he's a good friend now after 9 years. And he said, "Yeah, come and see me." And it was a Arabic gentleman. Come and see me. I'm interested in some life insurance.
Right.
And this was after about 3 months. And after making, I was probably doing 200 calls a day, and I was meeting 3-4 people a day. Half of them would cancel, so I probably had 3-4 meetings in the diary a day. I'd probably sit down with maybe 2 a day. And the majority of times it was just, no, 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 no. I remember the first 4 or 5 meetings I went along in with this pitch memorized in my head. Too nervous to do it when I went into the first 5-10 meetings because I remember the first meeting I ended up talking about mortgages.
Right.
And I came out of the meeting thinking, James, are you a mortgage advisor? You've gone in thinking that you're an advisor and you've got, a very limited amount of skills and knowledge behind you, and then all of a sudden you go talking to a guy about UK mortgages. So the path, like with anything, you're not sure how the path goes out. But after a lot of calls, got chatting to a guy on the phone, which seemed genuine, and I've got a couple of kids, want some life insurance, and went along, and it was back and forwards with some meetings. I think we had three, 4 meetings, and he said, "Yeah, this is what I want." And after 3 months, that was the deal. And I think at the time it was probably like about $10,000-11,000.
Oh, right. Okay.
The deal, which was ridiculous for me. I just thought I just won the lottery,
That's mad.
and had this case come through, and then he became we played golf with each other, became a really good friend and client.
Okay, so that's interesting then, because again, you know, offshore financial advice around regulation and commissions and fees, etc., has always kind of still does really get a little bit of a bad rap. So your first bit of business that you wrote was a life protection policy, and you earned 11,000. Did you personally earn that, or was that like split between you and your business? Or
It was so back then, because they changed each company has a different way in which they kind of quote the figure and how much they get paid. But
yeah,
it was, to me, was probably about, say, 7 or 8. It's a bit weird. The company I used to work for, the way in which they probably the gross might have been, say, 13, 14, and I would have got, say, 7 or 8, something like that.
okay. So when it comes to actually sort of, so back then, and we'll talk about the changes probably to the regulations that's happening and what's going on, and because I know it is changing out there.
Mm-hmm.
So back then you were earning commission, essentially full commission on products. So the product provider would pay that commission to sell that product. So did you have like a selection of products that Globalize said you've got to use? Was there like a restricted panel, or could
No.
you use anything you wanted? And
Yeah. We were free to use what we wanted. I mean, typically there was 4 or 5 different companies that you would select as the main players as an insurance company or as a product provider. And at the time, I understood 2 products. That was one thing on the course that we got you learn the products quite well. So based on what the client was looking for, the product that was a product that I selected.
Fine. Okay. So you had, you understood your needs-based selling off the back of the product range, but it was purely commission-based. So for you, like getting a deal across, getting one deal done was going to earn you some, considerable amount of commission. How long did you have to wait for that money to come through then? Is it quite quick or?
Yeah, I mean, it's typically 2-3 weeks after the first payment goes through.
Yeah.
So, let's say I sign him up on the 10th of the month. He might pay on the 1st of the following month. So then it would be, say, a month after, typically a month, 6 weeks after, you would receive all of that money in your bank.
So that guy was Arabic then, was he? Was he a local or?
No. As an expat.
He's an expat. Okay. Which kind of leads me on to another question really around winning sort of clients that are over in Abu Dhabi. Because obviously it always says expat, doesn't it? Expat financial advisor. So you're not just looking at expats from like the UK, for example, originally from the UK. You're looking at expats from all over the world. Is that right? Or
yeah, I mean, some people do go out there and I mean, Devere typically will just target British people because they want to take on their pensions, and they will say that it's easier to deal with a Brit. And for me, it was just that the data that I had, it wasn't a thought process behind it. The data I had was everything, everybody and anybody. I didn't know who they were, what they did. It was just going through a list of names and calls, and actually the list, all of the British people on the list just said not interested, go away. So the majority of the meetings were non-Brits.
They were like
expats, but non-Brits, and that's kind of how the business grew. It wasn't a decision to take to select these type of people. It's just the way that the business went.
Okay, so that was your first deal. That set you off then, basically. So then all of a sudden you thought to yourself, bloody hell, I can do this. And that's quite interesting. So the reality, and it's quite a good lesson, I think, for anybody who's starting out in any kind of sales job or any international, especially international financial advice position, that it can take time to get that first deal done, and to stick at it and persevere with it. And then once you've got one done, I assume you think to yourself, well, brilliant. I know I can do this. I know I can get a deal done. I know I can make some money out of this. I know I can make a career out of it. How did that transform how you were feeling and, about the job itself?
It's a bit of not great actually, because
really?
you feel really high after it, of course, because this huge commission, and you feel like because you've worked hard for a few months in this achievement. But then at the time, I kind of thought, well, I've done it now. I've nailed it. And then actually, I didn't do another sale for about 3-4 months after that.
Oh, right. Crikey.
So I'd gone back to running out of cash again, spent the cash because it is expensive out there, which we may come on to, but it is expensive. So gone back to ground zero again, thinking, well, what do I do? I'm back to square one. And for me, there was a lot of periods where it took me probably about 8-9 months to get up and running. And there's probably 3 or 4 occasions during the 8-9 months where I thought, this is so difficult. I can't do this anymore. I've got to go home. It was really challenging.
So you had many times where you were thinking about giving up.
Yeah. So it was probably a 2-month period after, 2 to 3 month period after the first sale where I didn't have anything again. And then things started to pick back up, and it's just a case of keeping the plate spinning. The moment that especially at the start, you've got to work so hard to get that engine turning. But then once it's turning and you've got all these plates spinning, the more likelihood you have of making sales. And it's really difficult at the start to get them plates turning, that big engine running.
Is it? Are we talking almost like a pipeline here? Is that the type of thing, or is it just the understanding of different parts of the role and how to win clients and when to phone and how to manage your day? Were these all the things?
Everything. Yeah, I mean, the job's still difficult now, but because like with anything, you've got years of experience, you've got confidence, you've got belief, what to do, when to say, when to turn the tap on, when to turn it off. Whereas at the start, you've just got to make mistakes, and then mistakes are very costly, but you've got to go through that before you can start to go, okay, well, that works. And actually, if I say this like that to a client, they like it and it comes across well, and you have to play it by ear. And no matter how much training, we all go through as in sales, and I actually think you come across very well, Sam, in terms of sales. You ask really good questions and things, but you have to be yourself. It's all well and good someone saying, right, well, you need to be Devere, white shirt, clean shaven, have a pitch, do this, but we're humans at the end of the day, and the more yourself and true to yourself you are, the more believable and likely and likable that you'll come across.
Okay, so it's about absolutely being honest and trustworthy as well. I think people can see through somebody who's bullshitting, and someone can people can see through someone who's trying to get a number over on them. Basically, it's very, very obvious. And I think classic sort of behavioural psychology and how we interact with each other is the thing that people buy. Really, the old classic people buy off people, and I think when you've got a background of criminology, I think, or criminal, especially a law background in criminology, I'm sure you've had to get some people on your side back in those days as well. Like and there's a lot of psychology around working in law as well, isn't there? That probably panned across for that. All right then, cool. So that was your kind of first year. So good. Nice little sum up, really. And that was the key thing that I wanted to get from this was, what is the reality? You're being honest right now. There's some people come on these, someone would, like, if I spoke to a recruitment consultant who specifically recruits for offshore financial advice roles, right? Wherever they might be, Kazakhstan or whatever, they will sell it till it's blue in the face of how easy it is. Oh, it's this, it's that, you're going to make loads of money and there's loads of clients out there and people are earning millions of pounds. And that's true. People do earn very, very good money out there. As you rightfully pointed out, it's a small percentage of the people that actually fire through the hard times and the crap and how difficult it can be, because you're not going to get an abundance of training. You're not going to get an abundance of development. And in some companies anyway, and it is down really to the individual and their attitude towards wanting to achieve their goals. Do you think is a big part of that is the attitude and the drive that person has and the discipline that person has? Because as you mentioned, I could imagine some people going out there, 23 years old, Billy Big Bollocks, egos like, size of a double-decker bus, and getting their first commission check, buying a Rolex, and then coming home. That's the way I can kind of understand it probably happening. People just failing or just drinking themselves into stupor or something and thinking, oh God, it's been a holiday. I'm coming home with their tail between their legs. So I think it's good to hear that that's the reality that you experience. The reality is it is hard, and that it's tough to get on with. But moving on from that then, because you've obviously been out there. How many years have you been out in the UAE now?
Over 9 now.
9 years, right? So if you've done 9 years in the UAE, you must have been a success. So walk me through your journey then, from your first year of, pains and struggles. Walk me through your journey over the last 9 years to where you are now.
So I was with Global for, say, about 4.5 years.
Yep.
And then the last 5 years, I've been with another company, Arlo Associates, and it's kind of a joint name, Arlo and 7 insurance brokers. The first 4.5 years was, it started off as where I explained the first 6-9 months was really challenging. At the time, they had 100 people working for the company internationally. So, for me being quite competitive, you're looking at the list and going, okay, well, what do them guys do differently that from what I'm doing? How are they succeeding? How are they writing? Because it's all figure based. So you're obviously looking at the board and you're looking, and everything's around just how much money are they making. And we go to these quarterly events, and you meet these people and you're seeing how they carry themselves. And sometimes the successful people, which I think this is a good thing, the successful people within the company will stand up and do a talk about how they do the job and why they're successful. So they're sharing and giving back, which I think is nice. And then just, over the years, gradually move up the leaderboard. And I think within 3 years, I was within the top 3 of the leaderboard. So
what does the top 3 look like then? So if you're in the top 3 of Global Eye, how much money are you earning?
400,000 or 500,000 a year dollars.
400,000 or 500,000 US dollars a year, tax free.
Yeah.
That's a
So
top.
good money. Yeah.
How old were you when you were earning that type of money?
Uh, 30, 31.
30.
Mm-hmm.
Crikey! So if we're going from £25,000 a year, did you ever imagine you'd be earning nearly half a
No,
million dollars?
never. No, no. I remember when I first moved to the office, and they had a board there, but the board was just for the Abu Dhabi team. So it was only say five people, and there was a guy that was at the top there, and it was like September time, and he had 160 written up on the board dollars, 160,000. I remember thinking that is an insane amount of money.
Yeah.
That's I mean, which it is. It is. I mean, it's a lot of money, and he. I just, I was just amazed that actually it is true that actually you can earn these, because you never know, the recruitment guy, 100 grand a year, you're thinking, is that true? Can I actually do that? And then this guy comes in and, I see him coming in once a week and just handing over to an admin lady some application forms, and he's got 160 grand on the board. And it's like, actually, this is real.
Fair play. Oh, cool. Okay. So I interrupted you there. You were sort of telling your story there.
It's okay. So yeah, I quite quickly moved up the ranks when I started to see that actually it is possible, and try to look at, well, what is it that these guys are doing. And with salespeople, they never really want to give away generally, because they're so competitive. They want to feel as though they've got an advantage over other people. So it's very rare that people do share. But I quite quickly moved up, and I was fortunate that I had a manager. After probably 2.5 years, I had a manager that was really good at sales, really good at having a pitch, which was, I would say, more normal than the Devere type of pitch. Because I always think I'm not really a good salesperson, but I come across as personable and sincere. But if I could add a little bit of sales technique to it, then maybe it's a nice formula to have. And he was quite good as a mentor, as a coach, and that was probably for about 2 years. So that then, I was maybe around about 6th, 7th, 8th in the company or something like that. At the point where he started training, and I went up to 2 or 3. I never got to number 1, but I was 2 or 3 for a few years.
And that was off the back of his training. So, you're sort of explaining there really that with that training and with that development that you received, that it did actually, and what sort of impact did that have on I know I keep going back to earnings, but we're talking about offshore financial advice here. That's what, people want to know what the earnings are, what impact did that have on your earnings then, that training itself? Did it sort of, if you quantify that as income, what amount did it increase it by?
Well, that was when it got up to around the, say, $500,000 mark. So I was probably like, say, 200-ish, 300-ish when I was at like between, say, 7th, 8th and 9th in the company. Because it falls off very, I mean, the guys between, the top guys are maybe around $1 million. And then it then fades away, but fades away quite quickly. So the top 10 guys are doing really, really well. Probably the bottom 90 would be struggling, and that probably goes across most professions. If you take a professional golfer and you look at the earnings of a professional golfer, there'll be a million, but then the guys at the bottom are struggling to pay their bills. And it was the same for that. So I was probably around maybe 200-ish when I started working with the guy, with the manager, and then it then moved up to 3, 4, and then I was up to maybe 500-ish before I left.
And this was Global again, was it?
Mm.
So obviously, fantastic. So a good example there, that having a good sales manager in place, or a good manager, mentor, trainer was paramount to you becoming a success. What specifically, though, was it? I know you mentioned there that you were observing and watching what the higher earners were doing, and I think that's what I would do personally. I would just go in there. I would just gravitate straight away towards the people that are earning the most money, the people that are the most successful, and I'll just sit there. I don't just sit there at the side of their desk. I'll freak them out. But I would be looking at them and watching them and listening to them and understanding what it is that they are doing. I'll be wanting some of their time. I'd be like, really, really interested in them, because if that's all I would do. I just look at the person who's doing best and try to emulate what that person's doing and put my own personal spin on it. Is that good advice for somebody going out offshore? Do you think that's a good thing to do, or is it a bit cagey, or do people don't particularly like that type of style?
It's a great question, and I think it depends on your ability to see people. And what I mean by that is it's very easy to look at someone and say, right, well, because you're number one, you must be the best. Well, that's
Right.
not always the case, especially in our industry.
Okay.
If you're able to look at people and say, okay, well, and pick snippets maybe that actually I quite like what you're doing there and the way that you carry yourself or what you're saying, but I don't like the other parts. I'm going to ignore that and basically pull together pieces, which is what I feel as though I did. Pulled pieces of people that I thought was important for the job, important for the client, important for me to grow and do, have a career and it be a healthy career.
Okay.
One thing that you being in a big office in a big sales environment, that there's a lot of testosterone around, and the guys at the top, there's an immense amount of confidence.
Is there?
And that's what I took from the guys at the top, that they've got so much belief in themselves, that when they walked into an event and there's 100 guys in there and there's only a handful of them guys that know they're at the top, the confidence of them was incredible. You could feel it, you could sense it, and everyone else, including myself, was in fear of
Yeah.
them. So I think the quicker that you can kind of pick the pieces up of the people around and say, actually, I like what they do. I like the way that they might explain something. I like this, like that, the better. So yeah, I think it's good to learn, but don't follow just one person.
And from your experience over the last, say, like 9 years of your career, is there any special source? Is there any formula? Is there anybody from a certain background that does well when they go out to Abu Dhabi or offshore to become a financial planner? Is there any specific type of person? Because I wouldn't think, no offense, but your background moving over there, I wouldn't think in my head, oh, right, that's definitely a person that would do it. I'd be thinking in my head, well, grab somebody who's probably got a few years worth of experience of sales, for example.
Sales, yeah.
Perhaps they've worked within financial planning previously, and perhaps they don't particularly like working in the UK, or they're quite successful in financial planning. So, but they're thinking about transferring their skills abroad because they want to live abroad, enjoy the sunshine, a different culture, that type of thing, and try to gear it towards as much transferable, obvious experience as opposed to not so obvious. So, does that make sense? Is that kind of?
Yeah, I honestly don't think it matters what you've done before. I think the key ingredients, and we've spoken a little bit about this, that it comes down to you as a person, and you need to set your stall out of is this just a quick thing, or is this a career? And granted, I didn't know that at the time, but I quickly learned after 6-9 months, actually, this is a career.
Okay,
and
cool.
and I think it's just the drive and want to soak up as much energy, and you're hungry for knowledge. And I think the more that you do that, the quicker that you'll learn, and the more successful you'll be.
Okay, fine. So, okay, cool. So, Global Eye, you were one of the top boys there. That's a good question, actually. Top boy. Was there any top girls? Or is it mainly male dominated?
Mainly male, but there was a couple of ladies which were in the top 7 or 8. Yeah.
How well do female advisors go down in the UAE? Because obviously culturally, women aren't seen as equals, are they? Is that, can I say that or not?
I think there's probably a very small percentage of that being true.
Okay.
With the elder generations, I think as things are becoming more cosmopolitan and international, and I think that's probably fading out. But yeah, I think as a female, it's still equally as fine. I mean, there's some situations where I think it's beneficial to be a female, maybe some where it's not as beneficial. So again, it's just learning, and avoid, if you're a female listening and you're thinking about doing, doing this job, avoid doing any, evening first meetings, over dinner and a glass of wine, because it's probably sending the wrong signals. Try and keep it as professional office hours as possible. I think that'll probably apply anywhere, not specifically to the UAE.
No, that makes sense totally. Okay, so top of your game there at Global Eye, doing really, really well. And then what happened?
And then a gentleman that I used to work with in Global Eye had set up his own practice, and approached me and said, why don't you come across and set up the Abu Dhabi office and build a team, build an office. And it was quite exciting because I felt as though I was ready for a new challenge. I kind of felt as though that with Global Eye, things were stagnant. They weren't looking for new products. The services and things that they were offering as a company, I thought were a little bit, they needed to be improved. And I used to raise these concerns to the owner, but it was something that wasn't really taken on board. So I thought, okay, well, this is a chance for me to, if I'm going to want to up my game, I can set the bar with the new company. And so then I left and started that.
So you left and then joined Arlo Wealth Management.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes.
Cool. So you went into Arlo Wealth Management then. And when you joined Arlo Wealth Management, what level did you go in at? Were you sort of going in as a wealth manager, or
No, I was running the office.
You were running the office.
So I was head of Abu Dhabi was the title at the time.
Head of Abu Dhabi. Okay, cool. So how many people were you managing anybody when you were at Global Eye at all? Did you have anybody sitting underneath you at Global Eye? Or?
No.
Okay, so no experience of managing. So
No.
you've moved from being like one of the top salespeople, one of the top advisors, into running a branch. So was the benefit of running that branch being that you had, what was it, within you that was exciting? Was it the, tell me why you decided, well, because it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because especially in sort of sales businesses and businesses in general, you tend to look to the person who's doing the most business, and then you think, well, turn them into a manager, and you're taking away your best salesperson or your best financial planner, turning them into a manager and expect to do a completely different job, and probably expecting them to continue writing the level of business that they were writing, and scratching your head, wondering why that person probably isn't doing it. So what was it in you? Were you just have a drive was there sort of prestige, ambition around wanting to build your own business or being part of the growth of something that made you then think, well, I'm going to leave Global Eye and do that?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit of all of that. I mean, I've always been someone that wants to try and give back if I can. And if I felt as though the skills that I'd developed over the 5 years of doing the job, it was nice to be able to use that and help other people and get them to earn, more money and benefit more clients along the way. And it was just a new challenge and, a new journey.
Is it quite sort of, does everybody know each other over in Abu Dhabi then when it's financial planning, because, did you know the companies, was it like a selection of companies and you knew who they were and who works there and who's doing quite well? Is it quite cliquey like that or not?
A little bit. I mean, for some people it can be because they want to go around and ask. I mean, I keep myself to myself a little bit, but yeah, everyone, especially because people do move around a little bit, so they might move through companies. So yeah, there is a crossover, and people do get to know each other. So yeah, there can be a little bit if you want that. So but you can also keep yourself to yourself.
You can keep yourself to yourself. So okay, so it's not like this kind of like collection of advisors all rolling around, going to the same pubs and all that kind of stuff out there and mingling in the same places. It's not that kind of cliquey type fibre. No, cool. So in the UK, right? Obviously, you've never worked as a financial planner in the UK, but I'm sure you could relate to this. So if a financial advisor leaves one company and joins another one, they tend to have built up a client following or client relationships, as we like to call it. And in the UK, there's restricted covenants in place that stop that person from, say, novating any business across unless within their contracts it states that they can do that. So the way they're paid in the UK, obviously, is recurring income off of ongoing advice, but also initial fees as well. So if someone's built up 10 million under management and have got 100K's worth of recurring income, if they leave a role and go to another place without that contract in place allowing them to transfer, agencies across, they can lose out on that income, or it takes a while for that income to come across. If you're earning, $400,000-$500,000 a year, there must have been a concern to you that if I leave this company and join another, I'm going to forego, I'm going to lose clients. What happened there? What's the situation around client ownership and moving different companies and all that kind of stuff? Because you're self-employed, aren't you, at the end of the day when you're out there? Okay.
I mean, it is the same. And if you look at our contracts, they all stipulate that you can't poach clients. The clients belong to the company, not to ourselves. Excuse me. But I knew. I mean, I had 100 plus clients at that point, and I had a great relationship with all of them. I really tried my best to look after every single one of them, and I knew that when I left, that ultimately the choice is in the client. And the client would say, actually, I wasn't with Global Eye because of Global Eye. I was with Global Eye because of James, and I want to move to where he's gone. And I spoke to most of them, if not, probably 70% of them before I decided to leave, and explained to them, look, if I was to leave, would you come with me? So then it was just a case of the client saying, look, because they would get a call immediately. The moment I handed my notice, they get a call immediately. James has left, blah, 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 and they try their hardest, which is natural, to put a bit of grey light on me as an individual and say, look, stay with us because we're this, and if you move with James, then you might not get as good a service. But I knew that the clients would move with me, and everybody apart from one moved across.
And so you had really strong relationships with your clients. So the perception of offshore is that you kind of do a deal and kick the client out the door and you never see him again. So, is relationship building massively important over there as well?
It's everything. It's everything. And if you don't want to build these relationships with the client, don't do the job, because you're just going to be in and out within a year. The client is the only ingredient really that is going to give you the ability to grow your business. And the more that you think about them and the more that you care about them and you try to do the right thing, the more that down the line that's going to come back and reward you.
Okay, interesting. So do you generate a lot of your clients via existing client relationships? So is it a referral type business, yours, or is it all kind of new? Are you constantly going out and finding new clients? Or is it referrals? Is that a big part of your growth of your business?
Yeah, I mean, the first probably 2 years, the majority of any new business, I would say 90% of the new business was from cold calling.
Yeah.
Especially the first year. In the last, I would say 5 years, I don't do anything to do with cold calling. My business has only grown from purely referrals.
So it's
I've never even spoken to anybody that's a cold lead. So it's and that goes back to what I was saying before, that the better that you serve clients, the better that you look after them, you make them feel like actually James is the guy. He genuinely cares about me. The more likelihood you will have of getting referrals and growing your business.
I mean, there's a lot of wealth in Abu Dhabi, isn't there? There's a lot of very wealthy people, and to the typical clients that you deal with, are they considered to be high net worth, high earning type clients? Is that the ones that you deal with, or would you deal with any type of client?
Yeah, and because if let's say that I've been looking after you, Sam, for 3 years, and you say, look, one of my best friends is a butcher. Right. He's a really good guy. He might have had a bad experience in the past, or he wants someone. I'm not going to say, look, Sam, unfortunately, because he doesn't earn this figure, I'm not going to look after him. I mean, that's just completely, cutting off the relationship. You've trusted me enough to look after him. So for me, I don't have any minimums and things. As long as somebody has the ability to be a client, and sometimes I'll go and sit with somebody who's in debt and you can't do anything for them, but you still call up the person that's introduced me and say, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to help them.
So just run through the different types of products then, or the different types of services that you offer as a financial planner.
So anything from savings, investments, protection. I mean, I expand things out and will help people with, I feel as though now I've got the experience to be able to help people with businesses and setting things up. But properties, businesses, savings, investments, bank accounts. So I think we have a wider range of advice angles, not necessarily products, but advice angles to be able to sit down and discuss with clients.
You do a bit of
when you're offshore.
Yeah, when you're
I mean,
offshore.
Typically now, what's becoming more popular at the moment is some financial advisors are getting people passports. If you've got an Egyptian person that wants an American or Canadian passport, there's ways of which of improving their status and citizenship. So that can be something, for example, that we can do. It's not something that I've done, but it's something that advisors are doing now.
So in the UK, then, if a financial advisor gives advice and that financial advice is deemed to be bad financial advice, it can come bite them in the arse. And a lot of them have to have PI cover in place just in case the advice they give is wrong. And in the UK, that PI cover, is going up and up and up and up. The cost of it is becoming very, very expensive. What's it like offshore then? Do you pay PI cover? Are you liable for any of the advice that you give, or do you have many? Is there like the FCA over here? Are complaints upheld out there? What happens? Obviously, throughout your 9 years, you must have come across some people that have not been happy with advice that you've given, or happy with the advice of Global. What and that's a bit of a horror story or a bad image that offshore financial advice has, is that it's all a bit unregulated, it's all a bit dodgy, and people's money's not protected, and evidently that's been evidence, that has come out. How do you position yourself as an advisor around that, and what's your views on that?
I mean, it's easy if you're going to do the job correctly. It's easy to go up against that, because you can, if you're doing the job correctly, you stand out like a sore thumb. That if you come across genuine and honest, it's quite nice to be able, that the competition is so bad that you can really stand out in the crowd. In terms of the protection, so that they have an insurance authority regulation, which is the equivalent of FCA in the UK, and they're not as active as the FCA, but there are still a governing body that you can go to make complaints if somebody's been missold or given incorrect advice. I have known them, act upon the victim or the person that's received it and deal with it proportionally. I mean, I know some people that have received the money back that they've invested. Sometimes the company, if the advisor, I've heard before, it wasn't with the company that we work with, but different companies where the advisor was just completely frauded the client. It was obvious it was a fraud. They've been sacked, and the company gave back the client the money.
Can that person face prison? Can he go to prison for the advice that they've given? And does that happen?
No, I mean that the criminal law areas in the UAE are different to the UK. I mean, potentially they could. I've never heard of anyone going to prison like in the UK and the US, but certainly deported, and
So it is, let's not beat around the bush. It is quite loose out there then. It is quite, dare I say it, a little bit Wild West. I shouldn't really say that, because it's, it's an industry out there that's thriving. You're doing incredibly well out there, but there is a feel of it being a bit Wild West, in the sense that there isn't the regulation or the legislation, etc., that you see in the US or the UK. It is a bit looser. So there's a little bit more, I guess and that's why there is as well a bit more opportunity out there for people. And there is still law, there is still things you have to do. You can't go out there and be an absolute crook, but there are people out there who are crooks. But if you're a good financial advisor and you have good practice, you stand out like a sore thumb because you're doing the right thing by the client. And I guess good news travels fast, and that's where you generate your new referrals from as well. What about things like cash flow modeling and all, lifestyle financial planning, this whole kind of approach in the UK that we're seeing now? is that something that you guys do out there as well, or is it not so much? It's just, well, here's a life cover. Here you go. I'll give you a life cover, or here's an investment opportunity. I'll give you that. Are you planning for futures, pensions, and all that kind of stuff as well?
This comes down to the individual. So this is an area that I have been working with a coach for a couple of years now, and we've been putting together different structures to really benefit the client, and everything is geared around the client. But traditionally from the company, you'll have a fact find that might be, say, 6-7 pages long that you go through and you have to justify, but it isn't really that side of it, and the fact finding process and learning what's important to the client, I think, is what falls down in the UAE compared to the UK.
Okay.
But this is where I wanted to try and major on myself, because I knew that's it's the important part, not because of a regulation point of view. It's put in place because it protects me as an advisor, but also it helps building the relationship and understanding the client. The more you understand the client, the more you can provide solutions for them.
Okay, cool. So, it's something that you're working on as well, trying to make a better experience for that client, and planning, basically proper financial planning for them, as instead of product sales, and that's something that I suppose is starting to come over there now, and that's something that you're interested in doing. Fabulous. So when so Arlo Wealth Management, then, so let's just go back to that then. So joined to Arlo Wealth Management, you're running the Abu Dhabi branch, and you've been doing that for how long now?
5 years.
5 years.
Roughly,
Okay. Okay, great stuff. And what benefit did that have for you then, moving from GlobalEye, where really kind of, you were a cog in the wheel, I guess, you were one of many, to then going off and setting up the Abu Dhabi branch of Arlo Wealth and running that Abu Dhabi branch? What did that give you in benefits over being a cog in the wheel at, I shouldn't say cog in the wheel, not if anybody's working there at the moment, you're not a cog in the wheels, but you know what I mean.
I think just a different perspective. I think it's always good to have new challenges, new changes, and get your brain thinking in a different way. I mean, I've learned more about probably myself and the job, and what's crucial and what's not crucial, and from they always say that you learn your most when you're outside your comfort zone, and I've been more out my comfort zone especially in the first 2-3 years of moving from the company. So yeah, I think that it's always good to keep challenging yourself and develop and grow.
Are you building a team at the moment? Have you got a team of people there? Are you building it? Have you got aspirations to build? What's going on with the growth?
Yeah, I mean, we got up to about 15 guys at one point. So the owner of Arlo really wanted us to grow. So we got up to, it was a team of maybe not 15, maybe 12, 13 guys. But they were the wrong type of guys so we kind of then stepped off that a little bit, because there was a big push to grow. And of course, when we're then growing and building, our income then drops.
Yep.
So I kind of stepped away from that and just focused on myself. But I think I'm at the point now where it'd be nice to go back into building again and passing on, but doing it correctly. Not just because somebody at the top of the company says, bums on seats, get some guys in, finding the right people, the right type of guys, and growing it correctly.
Well, based on your experience of being, wet behind the ears, joining GlobalEye and going in there at the very bottom level, how difficult it is to become an international financial planner. Clients don't grow on trees, and it takes blood, sweat, and determination, and some drive, and the ability to not give up. So what you've seen that already, and I suppose you can learn from your mistakes. You don't want 10 people that might not have that drive, if you like, because you're just going to hemorrhage money. I assume that, especially now as well, because people aren't really willing to work on a self-employed basis as they were like 9 years ago. People now, especially younger guys, do want to have that security of a basic salary. So they're going to be paying out a load of money for basic salaries. Obviously, it could lead to becoming like a self-employed advisor and a pure commission once you start to see the income coming in. But there is an expense, isn't there? And if you're bringing people in on those salaries, it's eating into your profits. and all of a sudden, and your time and energy as well, then you ain't going nowhere, and you've experienced that. So it's about using your previous experience of what you went through to make sure that someone has the right start, really. Have you
Yeah.
got a sort of plan of action around that, so to grow your business? Because obviously you're doing very well. I assume moving from Global Eye to Arlo Wealth Management, you've increased your overall client base and referral
Hmm.
network. Has that gone up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, significantly. Yeah.
So you where you are have opportunity then with clients where you need advisors to come in and start working with those existing clients, I would say.
Yes. Yeah. It's getting to that point now where, either from a support process and someone comes in and they'll, come in as an advisor within my clients, or, potentially they'll build their own and grow and be their own, IFA.
Just talk me through then your client acquisition. So if someone comes and joins you, then talk me through the options of what you think are the best ways to go out and win clients over in Abu Dhabi.
I mean, that's the million dollar question. I think it's a combination of everything. I don't think there's one tactic that works. I think it's just doing everything and giving everything 100%. So, from being on the ground and saying, right, I'm here, I've got my briefcase, I've got an understanding of the products and a pitch. I'm not really into a pitch too much. I think a pitch that works for them and matches their personality. And then they're going to have to do a little bit of cold calling, a little bit of networking. Maybe they'll get fortunate that, if they come with me, maybe I can hand over some clients. But it's just the case of they have to give first and give their time, give their effort, give their support, and wait. And this is where the kind of 6 months, 12 months comes in, wait for it to come back. If they try to force it and say, well, I haven't made a sale this week in my first week, I'm going home, well then, it wasn't the right job. Doing everything they can to
So basically proactive. So,
yeah.
it's an action job. It's not sitting back and being a theorist and reflecting and all of that. If you're not putting action in and effort in, you're not going to get something back. The more you do, the more you get back. Is that what you're sort of saying?
Yeah.
And
just try and find ways to help people, try and just talk to people. And it could be anything about finance. And there was areas where I ended up going to people's houses at weekends and helping them look at a remortgage, because I had an understanding. I'd done properties for many years. I had understanding that was just a good place to start, and if you go and do 100 nice things for people, even though you're never going to get anything out of it initially, something good will come from that in the end. And I think just getting yourself out there and saying, look, it doesn't have to be that if I'm going to go and do this for you, I have to get something right now. Just doing everything you can to get your name out there, that you're a good guy, you're supportive, you're trying to help people, and good things will come back to you.
So when it comes to, making your money, earning your income out there, it's a combination of commission, isn't it? A combination of commission, and there is like recurring income out there as well. Is that right on products? So you can get paid like a monthly or yearly recurring income. Is that correct?
Yeah, in the same way as the UK. So you have your assets under management, which you'll have a fee structure on.
And you'll have a fee structure. And does a client pay you that directly, or does it come off the underlying assets?
Either you could structure. I mean, 99% of it comes from the product, but it's all transparent. In the same way as the UK, you've got a 1% fee on that'll be taken per quarter for the management of that, and everything's done. Some of our products now are becoming a UK FCA regulated product.
Okay.
So, and it's becoming more and more like that now. So it's done in a very transparent way, and in the UK structure.
What's the biggest change that's happening over there at the moment that could affect your job or affect the industry?
The upfront commissions. So it was supposed to happen on the 15th of April. And now they've pushed it back because of coronavirus. It's pushed it back until September, October. But the way in which we got paid, so you'd receive on month one, you'd get all of the commission for the product. They're now halving that, so you'll get half of the money, and then the remaining half given to you over the term of the policy.
Oh, cool. Okay. All right. So, that's pretty straightforward. So that's making some changes there. Is that worrying anybody, do you think?
It's worrying the people that are not doing the job correctly,
Yeah.
because it now means that they have to do a proper job to get all of the money. They've got to look after that client for the years that they've set them up for to get the full money, which is a good thing. It's good that it's worrying them. But it might worry people that are looking to come out there. And, let's say that, like for me, that time when I got that 8 grand, 7 grand in the first month, that helped me get through the next few months. Well, if that was now, I'd probably only get 3.5, 4 grand.
Gotcha.
So you probably just need to maybe have a little bit more savings behind you if you're going to go out there, because you're not going to get the initial inflow of cash in the first. Once you've done like 1-2 years, you're fine, because you then got the ongoing money coming in. But it might be a little bit tougher financially in the starting point, because you're not going to get the full 100% injection of the commission. You're only going to get half.
Okay. So advice to somebody going out there, really be aware that you might not earn as much as you could have done within the first, say, 3 to 6 months when you really, really need it. Ensure that you've got a financial cushion for yourself, and make sure you're not overspending when you go out there, and you treat it as a job and not a holiday, because you potentially can't earn as much as you possibly could before. And it's going to be tough during that period as well, isn't it? And there are changes that are happening that are going to obviously impact the industry in a really positive way over there. And I think that's what's needed, isn't it? A kind of
Absolutely
RDRE type setup over there, where it's gonna separate these cowboys that I was talking about earlier and leave it to the guys that are doing a really good, honest job and providing advice in the right way, and not just after the almighty dollar. There's obviously loads of opportunity out in Abu Dhabi, and you've also, you've turned your hand to other things as well, haven't you? So what else have you done whilst you've been out there?
So a couple of years ago, I set up a medical insurance business, which just came by doing the job and learning and growing. And that's one of the nice things out there. You have more opportunities that come to you and present themselves to you, which has been a nice secondary part of an income. Being able to pass on the if you can call it sales skills that I developed over the years, and use it in a similar industry but not the same. So medical insurance out there is mandatory by law, so they have to have it. So I've built a team of people, sales and admin support around that, and I've tried to use the service because that's in a similar type of way that it gets a bit of bad press, and there's people mis-selling a little bit. And I thought, well, do you know what? This is quite nice, because the years of experience and service that I've been giving clients, I know that they're happy with it. I can now pour that into the medical insurance business and grow something there that runs alongside, and they kind of complement each other in the same way.
Fantastic.
So that's been nice to be able to do.
Bit of diversification as well for you, and different income streams. Great stuff. So, you're 27 years old, having a punt, going out to live with your mate over in Abu Dhabi, earning £25,000 a year. 9 years later, is it safe to say you're earning 7 figures?
Yeah. And it will continue to grow because of the hard work that's put in. It's only snowballing year on year. So after 9 years, it's gone to be 7 figures, and it will continue to grow.
Fantastic. So there is, streets paved with gold over there. There is opportunity. You can earn money over in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, offshore. Now, I can't speak of any other countries out there, but your proven experience there, and you're somebody that's done it and is doing it and is continuing. And I mean, you're my age, aren't you? How old are you? 38?
37.
37. Yeah, 37. Yeah, so I'm 38. So, you're going into your 40s, and then, 7-figure salary. Businesses that you're looking to grow, your financial planning side of it. There's regulations coming in that's going to make it better suited to the type of person that you are, and the type of person that you want to grow a business, how you want to grow your business for your clients. I mean, there's huge opportunity. If someone's thinking about coming over to the UAE or, Abu Dhabi, culturally, what is it? A bit of a shock to the system? Is it, is it a good place to live? Because I had a quick search, when you started telling me how much money you earn, and I was like, well, I can have a look at this. And I don't know. It's a city, isn't it? Essentially, Abu Dhabi is a big old city. Is there a lot of opportunity? Is there fun things to do there culturally? Is it,
Yeah,
would I, is it very different from the UK? I assume it is,
it was to the countryside. Yes, if it's say if you get used to a London lifestyle, then it's probably going to be more similar. I mean, it's an incredible place. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done 9 years, and I'm in the UK now as we're recording this, and
Yeah.
I'm on lockdown here because everything's shut down with flights. But whilst it's been nice to be here for 7-8 weeks in the countryside of things, I do miss Abu Dhabi. I class that as home, and it's an incredible place. It's to be able to go into a restaurant, and if you need to go to the bathroom, you know that you can leave your phone and your wallet on the side, go to the bathroom for 5 minutes and come back, and no one's even considered touching it. Is amazing. The safety is amazing. The opportunity. Nobody is really trying to. Everyone's really supportive and helpful. Schools are great. The weather, 10 months of the year is amazing. It is and it's becoming more and more westernized. When I went out there 9 years ago, it was the first Christmas. There was never a Christmas song. There was never any Christmas, decorations up or anything. Now you walk into the malls in, November, everything's Christmassy, and it's changing a lot and becoming more westernized. But it is an amazing place to live and to work.
What about the cost of living then? So, if you're earning a 7-figure salary, fantastic. But what happens if you're not? How much does it cost for the usual things, like a pint of beer or, a night out for some dinner or something like that?
It's probably double the
Is it?
cost.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is expensive because generally everybody earns, more money there. The average salary there for, say, an expat might be £8,000-10,000 a month.
Okay.
So, tax free. So it is, there's more money to move around, and, food and Waitrose, and, it's probably 2.5 times the price of cost of living, I would say. So that is something to bear in mind.
Also, what are you strike me as quite a calm, collect guy, the type of job that you do, I can imagine can be really stressful at times. Is it quite stressful?
Yeah. And still stressful and still frustrating. And I think as we grow as a person, I think, the more successful you are, the bigger the problems that you will have. You look at, say, Elon Musk's problems that he has today will be very, very significant compared to the problems that I'm having. But I think it's good to I see problems as a challenge, and okay, well, this has happened, it's not great, and how do I overcome it? What solutions have I got? And I think if you have that mindset, you don't really get stressful.
So you
I guess
kind of look. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that if you get a lot of stress derives from maybe not having any money, and if you've got savings behind you, you can solve a lot of problems with money. And I know that sounds probably not great, but they always say if you write a check, you can solve a problem. And if you do have some savings and you build it up, you can take away, not everything, but you can take away or reduce a lot of issues. Having admin support and people around you that can deal with these things where you don't have to deal with them all yourself, which is a nice position to be in.
Well, I think the security instinct anyway within us is certainly one that raises its head a lot, isn't it? We're built to want to find shelter, food, security, and if we can't see that we have that security, it sends us into an absolute fear cycle. And I think as much as probably money doesn't make you happy. I think it can absolutely contribute to looking after your security instincts, and it's one less thing to worry about. I mean, you tell somebody like money can't make you happy. You say that to somebody now who's lost their job during this period in COVID-19, and they haven't got a job. Perhaps they haven't got any income coming in. They're worried about the bills, they're worried about their mortgage, and it's like, yes, money does make you feel more secure. I'm lucky that I'm in a position where I'm not having to be worried about money. I'm a business owner, don't get me wrong, a recruitment company within financial planning during this period that is perm based. You know, I don't have any recurring income or anything like that, you know, and I've got a furlough staff and their worries and their concerns and everything. But we're lucky that we should hopefully, you know, get through this no problem at all. You know, some people haven't, have they? And that's the bit that money does make a difference. And I mean, if you can earn really, really good money, it's got to have a positive impact on your life. It just has to have it, as long as you're not getting, you know, crazy with, you know, I can imagine some people go out there, stick alphabet up their nose, go out and drinking all the time, buying crap, you know, and come back absolutely destroyed, you know. And if you're that type of person, unfortunately, you're going to do it. And if you're not in check, in line with your values, and you're living an honest life, if you like, you're going to have those troubles and those problems, aren't you? If you're given a load of money.
Yeah.
And I can imagine, like, I imagine a few people have gone out there, and I can see it in your recruitment. You get guys like, you know, never earned money like that before. They're 21 years old and all of a sudden earning 80 grand a year, you know, and they're just smashing themselves apart. And, you know, it's normal. I suppose it's kind of normal, but it's, but it, you know,
yeah.
keeping
And
yourself in check, isn't it?
if you're using the money in that way and it's to buy material things, then it's probably not. It might make you happy for you know, a millisecond, but then the long term of that is definitely not. But if you use it in the correct way and you use it for support, you know, if you're able to, for example, get somebody else to do your admin work or something, so that you can go and pick your children up from school, that would be, you know, everyone would say, well, that money has been able to give me, you know, more happiness and time to be able to spend with my family. And that's where I think if you use it correctly, it can serve a really good purpose.
Where are you going? What is the next because you've had an incredible 10 years, right? So where's the next 5 years going? Where do you see yourself by the age of, say, 45? What does it look like in your head?
To continue doing what I'm doing and you know, try to branch out a little bit. I mean, I'm trying to, and we've been chatting about this, you know, maybe grow a team of people around me and pass on this experience that I've got and build in that particular way in the IFA side. Still continue with the medical insurance business because I'm really liking how that's progressing, and I've got some good guys within that. And look at some other opportunities. You know, I've always had a passion around, you know, hotels and things, and one of my goals this year was to look to set up a little boutique hotel somewhere in Europe. It's probably not a good time at the moment, but just, you know, expand out, and doesn't have to be within the financial industry side, but just grow. And I think that's one of the nice things of being doing an IFA. You are effectively a business owner, and the skill set that you have to develop to become successful at that is skills that you can cross over in other industries. You're not just limited to financial advisory. You know, it's nice to build different income streams, and I think that you know, you can grow into different areas, which is nice.
Fabulous. So lots of you're quite an entrepreneur then as well, aren't you, really? Deep down. Did you always think you were an entrepreneur? Because you're obviously setting up different businesses here and there. Is that again, money's just created that opportunity and you're just being, you know, you're looking at how you can diversify and make more money? Or is it you've got a passion for seeing things grow? Or what's...
No, I mean, I don't think it's money that drives it, because, you know, if people have got money in the account, I think the natural thing is people go, well, what can I go and buy? You know, I don't have a flash car or anything now. You know, there's people that will go and spend that on things like that. And for me, you know, when you get into deep conversations with clients, and, you know, we've had some really nice chats over the past couple of weeks, and opportunities, you know, you're always working on your brain, you know, your skill set. And, you know, I always use this analogy when I'm talking about business and things with friends. You know, if you look at someone, say Alan Sugar or Richard Branson, if they lost all of their money tomorrow and they had to start again from absolute zero, within a year they would be a multimillionaire, because they haven't lost the skill set, the drive, the level of education that it takes to do something. And that's like with where I'm at now. And of course, I'm not even a patch on them guys, but just in terms of where my mind is now to where it was, you know, 9-10 years ago, is very, very different. And when I'm having conversations with people around me that might have a business, might have an idea. I would never have picked up on that in the past, but now I'm tuned into, okay, well, actually that's quite nice. And, you know, Sam's passion is this, and he really likes this, and his skill set is really good at this. Why don't we have a chat one day? And that's where I think you get to, that you just develop your, which I don't necessarily think it's just because of me. I think it's the job. I think it's the job.
You become a bit more intuitive and aware. So I suppose as well, when you go back to your security instincts being met, you're not being driven by something which is desperate. So you have that ability to step back and pause and evaluate, don't you? And not act off of those primeval instincts, you know, that drive you to do things off the cuff. You're thinking about things and you're seeing the opportunities. And I think that's a real, that in itself is a real positive, isn't it? You know, that's why you can diversify. That's why you can see other opportunities. And that's cool. So listen, thanks very much for spending some time with me this morning on Bank Holiday Friday. I can't believe I'm working Bank Holiday Friday. That's classic. Lockdown, you know, got no idea or no concept of days. Thanks so much for your time today. You know, I've learned a lot, and it's really great to be able to interview someone and shine a light on what it's like to work offshore. Because, as I said previously, you know, throughout my 11 and a half years, you know, I've spoken to people here and there, and there can tend to be quite a lot of negativity around working offshore, and rightfully so in some respects. You know, not everybody makes it out here, but it's great to speak to somebody who has, and it's great to somebody who's got really, you know, strong ethics and a good work ethic, and somebody who's ethical basically around what they do and wants to continue growing their financial planning business, but in the right way. And thanks for sharing, all you've learned when you've been out there as well, out there in the UAE as well. So I'll certainly continue.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll certainly going to continue talking to you. And we're going to do a follow-up podcast as well, where we're going to talk a little bit about the growth of your business and how, you know, what it's like, what we want to, you know, the types of people that we want to attract you to come and join you, for example. I think those are areas that we're going to share. Get in contact with me now, and certainly I'm sure you'll be